Hey guys, what is up? AwesomeTheSauce here. Hope you guys are having a great day. Today, we're going to be talking about something that a lot of people have been wanting me to make a video on. We're going to be talking about if the new pins ruin school identity. If you guys are unfamiliar, there's a lot of new gear in Wizard101, and they come with pins. And what these pins do is they let you affix various stats, and the ones that we're going to be talking about today are the sword pins on the offensive stats. So y'all see it, right? The 19 damage and the 5 pierce, the 20 damage and the 98 crit. So with all the extra damage that you can get as a fire, you know, with Myth, for example, or really as any school getting any damage, a lot of people are asking, right? Like, is there school identity left in this update? And honestly, I was on the Wizard101 subreddit and I saw this picture and I was like, damn, this is actually like a real thing. This is a picture of a fire who managed to get maximum Myth damage with the new pins. I assume a pet, I assume the headmaster one from the professor's pack, all that jazz. And basically, he has more Myth damage than most Myth wizards would get. So what is the purpose of dual schooling and what are the devs planning with this? Let's dive into it. I think that the big point in PvE for dual schooling is adaptability. I think that eventually, as the game goes further and further, the schools that are gonna get countered by their, like, you know, opposites, like fire countering ice, for example, I think that's gonna get more and more intense. So running a secondary school like Myth, which actually somewhat counters ice a little bit, it's gonna be very important. I think that the same can be said for PvP as well, right? I think the whole point of running a secondary school isn't just to be a different school on your wizard. It's basically to have multiple options at any given point. And honestly, some of these spells really do make that easy, right? Like, they literally give you Myth traps on the fire over time. Like, this is clearly a good example of how dual schooling should really work in this game. So rather than ruining school identity, I think what they're intending with this change anyways, with Archmastery, with the pins, with adding some synergy between some of the schools, the devs are trying to make a situation where you're not just one school at max level, you're more than one, and you're creative about the way you combine schools. As in, you're not just min-maxing your gear to be a different school, you're actually a combination of the two, and any school that you pick will make it so that that's a unique combination. And that uniqueness is driven even further by what seems to be a new template about how they're organizing school. Essentially, they group all the schools into 2 categories each. So basically, like life, for example, you know it for healing, but the other category that it's supposed to really shine on is health. Storm is supposed to be very damage and healing heavy, which you might have noticed with their new gear and with some of their new spells. Fire is supposed to be pierce and heal heavy, which you might not really see the healing as much, but the pierce is very obvious with spells that literally clear shields before hitting. So essentially, with this new template based on how stats work and how gear works, you shouldn't really feel like you're the same wizard when you're running fire damage on a Myth versus when you're running Myth damage on a fire. So no, I don't think overall that it ruins school identity to run pins on any given school and run secondary damage, as long as there are enough challenges present to make both schools needed in that scenario. And that's something that I really want to talk about. I think the current biggest issue in terms of like how something might be ruining school identity is with ice, life, basically anything high health and high resist. And that's because your main gear gives so much resist and so much health on life and ice that when you add pins, like right now, I'm just adding death pins just to have fun with it. But let's say that I didn't want to add death and I wanted to add storm. This is a literal strategy in PvP right now. I could essentially just run full eternal gear, which is extremely high resist, as you can see. And it also gives quite a bit of HP, which, you know, I don't have all the eternal gear, but if I were to, I'd have a ton of resist, a ton of HP. And then instead of even caring about my ice stats at all, I could just run 6 sword pins for storm, meaning I could have every pin giving like 3 pierce and like 18 damage. But where it gets really concerning is that you don't have to stop there. Sure, some of these new wands are school specific, like for example this one, if I were to run it on an ice, it just wouldn't be possible. But there's still wands like this one that literally give more storm damage than ice. I could literally run this. You could also open these up and get non-school specific wands that are literally the same as a merciless wands, which I think, sure, it might have worked before this pin update, but if I'm running 6 sword pins, getting a wand that's basically a merciless wand on any school that I want is kind of wild. There's also universal damage at themes like this one that I can literally run on an ice and have storm pierce, storm accuracy, universal damage, and there's still a universal damage ring. Essentially, as long as you have a storm pet and you have a bunch of storm pins, you could run all of the really, really high resist and run the naturally high HP of ice, but your damage for storm, like this is 107 right now with half of my death pins. Imagine if I ran all of that with storm. I could have well over 160 damage. I could have well over 50 pierce, and my resist would still be near 70, and my HP would still be around 11,000. Essentially, I would be running better storm stats on an ice than a storm. The only limitations is that I can't run as many storm TCs as I used to be able to, right? You can't run storm out TCs anymore. They got rid of them. You can't run Oni no plague TCs. They got rid of them. But one thing that they seem to have forgotten is that Rusalka is a TC that you can literally get easily. There is nothing stopping me as an ice from running Galvanic Field, an elf pet, running Shrike, and just spamming these on an ice with extremely high health. Essentially, I'd be running the best resist, the best health, the best damage, and the best pierce in the game, all in one build. I think stuff like that is an example of where dual schooling is not a good idea because it does ruin school identity. If ice can run better storm stats than a storm, there is no point in being a storm. I know that there are people that will say if someone strikes, you should Banshee 3 times. I know there are people that will say if someone is running storm, just go on an ice and use the deadly depth spell. Go for it. It's a -50 weakness. All of that would work if not for the extremely high resistant HP that you can run while you're running all these offensive stats. Like if you actually Banshee spam a Shriking Storm Wizard, not only are they not going to do as much damage as they want, they're going to take backlash, and they're much closer to dead than they were before. But me taking 10% backlash with this much HP versus a regular Storm doing it, it's on another league. It's thousands of damage apart. So I don't really think with the way pins and off-school gear are, it's really a fair argument to even say you should play Storm or Fire because you can just be a life or an ice with better stats for those. I think they should seriously consider making TCs that are shads no PvP. I'm just gonna say that. I think they should seriously consider that because this is an outrage. In my opinion, if you're gonna be running Storm stats on an ice, I would hope there's a reason why that would be any different than me just doing Storm PvP on a storm with way less resistant HP. And I also think that the Professor's Wands should be school specific. I don't really see the reason to not make them that way. I know people are probably going to be like, yo, but like I want to run these stats or that. Like you can still run stats of a secondary school with pins. It's going to be way better if you're running offensive storm stats on an off school with the pins now, even if you remove the Professor's Wand. So I don't really see why the Professor's Wand was kept as non-school specific when you can literally get 100 extra damage for every school on every single wizard. I think those two changes would specifically address the whole, storm stats on a life or on an ice thing, which I think is really, really stupid. But I think there's one thing that we still need to talk about. What about PvE? And I think the whole dual schooling thing affects PvE in a totally different and unique way. I think there absolutely does need to be more challenges that make dual schooling actually important and relevant. I really want to see them get creative and give me a boss that's very, very good against ice, but maybe is very, very weak against depth, and therefore there might be a reason why I might set up some kind of thing that's like, like maybe like a Doomoni on using my ice identity, but I'm still doing depth damage. I feel like that type of challenge, obviously that's off the top of my head, that'd be really cool. Maybe that's a future raid concept, maybe that's a future thing in Wallaroo when it comes out next year, but I think right now it's way too easy for most of any world just to AoE spam, and for that reason alone, the same problem in PvP that I'm pointing out will manifest in PvE. You're just going to be running a ton of damage on any school and running resistant HP, and it makes your school choice a little less relevant than I think it should be. So I think the answer to the question in the title, are school pins ruining school identity? I think at the moment they're starting to, and I hope that they take advantage of the time that they do have while the meta is still forming to really address what I think could be something that's very fixable. We'll see what happens as the meta keeps going. I mean, obviously there's more spell audits coming, so a lot of the things that I'm talking about, well, they'll be moving and we'll be evolving, they'll be adapting, all of that. So I'll be making more videos. Drop a like if you enjoyed this video. I just wanted to make this because a lot of people were asking me to talk about it. Leave a sub if you're new, and I'll read every comment that I see about this because I know it's a hot topic, and as always, if somebody hasn't told you you're awesome today, they're doing something. I'll see y'all soon. Stay awesome, and yeah.